A couple of years ago, the Victorian Association were very generously given the help of Deloitte's Consulting to have a look at housing in Victoria as it stands at the moment. And this is some of the outcomes that Deloitte's came up with at that time. So they estimated 84 people in Victoria looking for houses and 90% of them living at home. This is 84 adults and around about 10% living in supported accommodation at that time. The next statistic's rather alarming. We've still got a lot of our adults dying in their early 20s. We've heard a lot about the reasons for that today, but even several weeks ago we had to say goodbye to another girl who had just turned 20. So I'm just going to show you the next slide, which actually says the same thing as this one, but it's I've had wonderful help from Alex Hadley, who's here with us today, and this is something he's showed, it's set up for me, but you can see with the scales there the total imbalance in the care arrangements that are currently happening in Victoria, and the very small number that are receiving the support that they need in Victoria at the moment. So what to do about this? We've heard lots of arguments about why there perhaps should be dedicated housing for people with PWS, and I don't wish to run through all those again today, but these really, I feel, are the three main points that underlie the argument. And I suppose going back to that last slide, I think I mentioned on that last slide that we don't have any dedicated PWS houses in Victoria at the moment. Well, that was true when I made the slide, but after talking with our DHS colleagues during dinner last night, and they're here with us today, I think their house is so close to being able for us to be able to call it a PWS house. I know the state government still doesn't want to use that label, and that's probably fair enough. It's just an ideology viewpoint. But they have now got a house here in Victoria with 4 people in it, only 4, and they all do have Prader-Willi syndrome. So we're extremely grateful that they've made that leap there and are prepared to recognise the need for this for some people, not for everyone. In Europe, of course, there are many, many houses in Europe, America and the United States. So the Victorian Association has been trying to get a house going for 35 years. They originally met and agreed to form an association so that they could try and build a house for their kids. After the end of 35 years, nothing had happened because the everyday needs of supporting the families was just overwhelming, and so it didn't happen. So out of the association we decided that we'd form a separate foundation. When you look at the association, it's a little bit difficult for that to actually own housing because it's an association of parents sort of loosely knit together with similar needs. So a separate foundation, which is limited by shares, is a structure. It's limited by guarantee, is a structure that can perhaps in the future own houses. So to try and, as it says at the top there, start small and aim large, we thought, well, we'll try and have the aim of establishing at least one house, which will be in Victoria as a start, and we just were wondering how many people should go in that house. Should it be 4 or 6? There are the obvious arguments. We love the single person model for some people that can manage that, and there's another 2 or 3 examples that I can cite. There's certainly another one in Victoria where a single person is supported on his own, but it is a large cost and there's no escaping that. Big cost to support someone on their own. So to have 4 was probably an ideal number. To have 6, we thought we'd aim for 6 at the moment. And once we establish the house and go through all the process of trying to raise funds, to work out the argument for what we believe is best practice, look at the process, look at the protocols for managing the house, and we thought we'd like to share those with any other group right across Australia, in Melbourne, country Victoria, right across Australia, so that those communities can also try and develop something in their own area if that's needed. So this really goes through what I mentioned a moment ago, but I would like to expand on that a little. When we started out a year ago, Bernard Saw and Tina Costanzo, both from the Victorian Association, came with me and my brother to help set up the foundation, and I'm hugely grateful for their efforts. But Bernard and Tina have had to step back a little bit. They've got particularly challenging teenagers, and things are, we all know that from time to time you can step forward and do something and step back. I'm able to step forward a little bit at the moment because Sue and our dear boy Ashley, who is 21, we've had to leave him in his respite home, and fortunately he's now found a permanent home. So it gives me a little bit of free time. It was a very heartbreaking thing for me to do, but with Sue's permission I'll have this little bit of free time to try and pursue this further. So it's a company limited by guarantee. There will be no profit for myself or anyone else that wants to step up and help me get this going. It's something that we want to develop because we're all aware of the huge sacrifices that the families make, and we're all aware of the hardship that the next generation that are not even born yet are going to discover. So we want to try and get this going and leave it for something for the Prader-Willi syndrome community. And if I can just expand on that a little bit, we've got the Research Foundation as a new initiative this year as well. And we're sort of thinking that there's, if you like, the three prongs of Prader-Willi syndrome in Australia. There's the associations to look after the day-to-day things and educate the public and all those things. There's the Research Foundation to obviously try and look after that side, and the housing. So if we can get those three sort of pillars going in Australia, we see that as quite a good basis. We're going to develop memorandums of understanding with the different associations, rather than it's not owned by the Victorian Association. So the progress so far, we've had Arnold Bloch-Liebler help us set up the foundation. Charitable tax status, DGR and TCC. We've had another housing accommodation report by Deloitte showing some of the best practice across the world, and we're wanting to spend quite a bit of time on analysing the NDIS, because that's where we believe the future funding will come from. We'll be educating, and I'll just go on to the next slide with that, because we want to make sure that we educate the families, and this is still progress we've already made. So we've got some plans drawn up. Manningham Council, we think it may be in the city of Manningham, but we're not really sure about that yet, because we've got a good relationship with the Rotary Club over there, and we see the community is being involved as well. And so as far as NDIS goes, we believe we should educate our families on how to apply for the funding. And we've got a great little contact through the multiple sclerosis group. They've given us some of their educational material that they're starting to train their families and their members with, and hopefully we can reword that and redevelop it. So we see our families, if the person with PWS wants to move out of home, they should be able to get a reasonable size package, and that package would be shared. Part of the package would be pooled to help run the care. So the care would be at this stage, two active days, 1 active night for 6 people. Now, 2 active days may not be enough for 6 people, but if someone's particularly difficult in the house, what's happened historically in other houses, certainly around Victoria, is that they've been thrown out by the other families. But if they need that bit of extra support, we'd see their packages being slightly larger and a third person coming in for support from time to time. These are the artist's impressions of what we may build. And I just want to very briefly go through some of the design aspects. You can see there are six units there. So we've heard many people say, and with conversations with others, that these guys would love to live on their own, but to actually live totally on their own, they usually die within average age of 18 months if they're living on their own, so it's impossible. In this particular one, we're not actually separate units, but we're thinking they feel fairly separate because they're sort of down the back and the shared spaces up the front. And this showing the unit a bit better, the sitting room, the bed, the ensuite with probably a walk-in robe, because some of them are inclined to get dressed all through the night a few times. And there's a hierarchical kitchen. We believe the pantry should be at the back and then have a kitchen that is not accessed by the clients, but then a second kitchen where they're invited in to help with food preparation whenever that's possible, as well as obviously the accommodation for the carer there, for the support staff. I don't like the carer idea. So that's just running through some of the things that our house will do. The next steps. We need to complete the fundraising campaign plan and then run the campaign. 3 million is a fairly arbitrary figure at this point. Complete the estimates, etc. Buy the land. Develop the advocacy training and the other support. So brings me to my last slide, which is what I ask of you. The first thing we need is a really knockout patron, and that may be someone that's known to someone in the room, it may even be someone in the room, but to have a major capital fundraising plan, you need someone that's very well known and is a real leader in raising funds. Well, not so much leader in raising funds, but a leader in inspiring the people around them. We also need more help, just physical help, because at the moment, a lot of it's falling on my shoulders, and I'd like some other people that would like to share some of the work that needs to be done. And obviously, we're looking at expressions of interest for people that may want to live in the house. We have got some already, but we're still interested in hearing from those that might be interested.